Good. Well, thank you very much. It's certainly my privilege to be here, and I have been involved a lot in the Red Deer River over the years, some negative, some positive, and most recently I've been doing quite a bit of environmental work in China and in Europe. So it's been a real interesting time. And before I get started, I would like to just remind everybody that I was asked to do this, that it's National Aboriginal Day, and that the Native Friendship Program for Youth has been gotten rid of. And so if you are interested in helping this program, I've been told, and there are pictures back there saying that they do an awful lot of good stuff, and a lot of good stuff around the river and so on. There is a box back there if you are interested in contributing. I've been asked to mention that. And I certainly, like I say, would like to talk about the Red Deer River. I'd like to talk about solar energy, and I'd like to tell you that my system now is 4.5 years old and is now 70% cheaper and 4 times more efficient if I would have installed it today rather than 4.5 years ago. So that just shows you how fast it's going. And I have the privilege in October of visiting the largest solar factory in the world in China. And they're the ones who have now turned my panel from little wires going quite far apart to a whole bunch of wires really close together, and that has made them 4 times more efficient. So it's coming, and I've been involved in lots of those new issues and new things. I would like to say as well that just asking the question when I look at the spill on the Red Deer River, I'd just like to know, why don't we double hull the pipelines across rivers and streams? Because I was involved with a project where we talked about double hulling tankers, and it was agreed by industry that we'd take all the tankers out of the oceans and we would build new ones that were double hulled. I wonder why you couldn't do that with a pipeline and thus prevent many of the spills that we have today. That's just a thought. New technology, let's move forward and change some things up, because that sort of thing we're going to pay the price for. And it's interesting in China how they've already realized that, and they already know environment now in their 5-year plan is #1 issue. And the fun part is I had part of helping them develop a score sheet where a municipality becomes an A, B, C, D, E, F. If you're an F, you get nothing from the federal government. If you're an A, you get a ton of money from the federal government. Think about the guys that are Ds and Cs wanting to go the next step. And how do they do that? And how do they fix their environment? And I'll always remember a little girl. I did a whole bunch of universities speaking to young people in auditoriums in China. And the interesting thing I'll always remember, after a speech on climate change, a little girl way in the back stood up, and I thought how brave this little girl is. I got Communist Party members all behind me listening to this. And the little girl stood up and she said, "What can I do? What can I do to change things?" And I said to her, "You got to convince your politicians that it's important." I could feel the chairs moving and the squirming behind me. And in the debriefing after, it was really interesting. They said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "First of all, why the heck would you let them ask you questions? We don't ever do that." And I always do that. And then I said, "Well, you remember the Great March in 1949? Remember what they did to government then? You guys, if you don't fix your environment, you're going to have that same problem." And it's interesting because now it's actually become #1 issue on their 5-year plan. So there's a country that's taken action. I wish ours would take a little more action. That was last week, though. I got in all kinds of trouble, and I was told by one of my former colleagues, "You better watch out for the drone overhead." Anyway, it was interesting because I did talk shows all last week and managed to do interviews with, I think it was some 80 papers. And it was interesting to say, hey, environment, guys, you got to put it in a perspective. Environment and the economy is where it's at. You can have both. I don't want to live in a cave. I don't want to lose my standard of living, but you got to put the two together. And so if I had one message to give, that would be it. But I was asked to talk about the National Roundtable and some of the work there, and the government in its wisdom has decided to get rid of it. Of course that was the nature of the comments last week. But I think it's a big mistake. I think that we need to put them together, and we need to talk about it. Because you're interested in water, I'm interested in water, Canadians are interested in water, it is a huge issue. I want to really quickly, and it's going to be hard because Jim mentioned to me, don't you have the record for the longest speech in the House of Commons? Yeah, once when I got worked up I talked for 4 days, which was quite a long speech. And, but it's interesting now, it's 989 pages in Hansard, and it's interesting, kids are doing their thesis, their master's and doctorate thesis on my speech, and that's really scary when you sit down with these smart kids, because they know so much more than certainly I do. But anyway, these, the National Roundtable, and I'll just, I'm going to have to really fly. National Roundtable was established in 1988. Mulrooney set it up. It basically has people, professionals, all walks of life pretty much within it, appointed by government, reporting directly to the Prime Minister and the Environment Minister, and basically does reports. The key issues there are research, convening, and advice. It's not a policy setting organization, it was advice. Now, the Prime Minister said that he didn't need that advice. The Environment Minister said he didn't need that advice, that he could get it off the internet. Okay, well, he's better at the internet certainly than I am, and so that's the problem I see. You've got to listen to all sides. You don't have to agree with everything, but you have to listen. And you have to listen to people who care and who have the background to talk about it. So there's 3 reports. They look like that. And the first one was to get information on water across Canada. The second one was to look at how it's being used and what the future might hold. And the third one is the recommendations to government. So I would urge you, if you're interested in getting more information, because I'm going to fly through this presentation, that the information is available and it's on the internet and you can get it. And it's condensed so that the minister could find it in a report. But anyway, these are the 3 reports. You can see the dates of them. I was not on the subcommittee that worked on water. So when you ask questions, I'm going to refer you to the guy that was the chairman of the group from within our National Roundtable. I worked on climate change mainly and provincial, federal relations, and also industry relations. And the interesting part is industry just wants a direction. They want to know, where are you going, government? They want to know what you want to do. They will cooperate, sometimes with a bit of arm twisting, but mostly if you just tell them what your directions are. So that's what the Roundtable is all about. The goals of the whole water program, as you can see, was to find out, is there enough water? People ask that question all the time. Is there enough water? How are we using it? Where will be the problems? What will be the problems of the future for Canadians? The phases then, as I say, identify the issues, then come up with some solutions, and then what are your priorities and how should you go about this? It's a long-term project, and of course many politicians don't like long-term stuff. The importance, we started off with forest, agriculture, mining, and the energy sector. They are 12% of our GDP. They are the big growth industry for Canadians, for Canada. Our resources are so important, particularly in the north and so on, and that's changing so fast. And so we focused on them, or this group focused on them in terms of, you know, they're 84% of the water users. So what are the problems? So that's what this first report is about, and I urge you to look at it and so on. They identified where the problems are, and as you can see, that's us. Water shortages are definitely going to be in our area, and the prairies are definitely faced with potential desertification down the road. And whether you believe in climate change or not, it's happening. There's scientific evidence. You can't deny it. The glaciers are melting. The permafrost is melting. I mean, there's just, I sometimes get in an audience 2% who say, no, climate change is just a big hoax. I guarantee you it's not. I wish it was, but it's not. So a snapshot of the regions and what the big users are of water. And again, I'm going to not take time to go through all of these, or I would be here till 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. But you can see that, and you can see that the kind of work that the National Roundtable has done on that. Starting off with the electric sector, of course, they're the biggest users of water and hydroelectricity. And just at our table, we were talking about the potential of the future for hydro. And if you look at the Northwest Territories, there's enough run-of-the-river hydro potential in the Northwest Territories to provide the electricity for the oil sands. And we never talk about that. We instead talk about transmission lines from the north to the south and things like that. Hey, that's 1950. We should be talking about where the energy really is and the potential of run-of-the-river hydro in places like our north. Oil and gas, of course, they need clean water, they need lots of water, and they are getting more efficient at it, and of course are using saline and using other types, but we need to push that even harder so they get that message. The shale gas is a good example of where not near enough research has been done, where we need a lot more information, and as I understand it from the experts that we listen to, the big thing is not so much the new well that they're putting down, it's the old wells where the leakage and seepage and so on is going to occur. So it's a matter of make sure that you know where the old wells are, the 1950 wells, not just the new one that you're drilling and putting chemicals down that could damage your aquifers. A lot more work needs to be done in that, and a lot more and you know, I was shocked when I went to Ottawa. I asked about the mapping of our aquifers in Canada. And I was shocked to find out that most of our aquifers are not mapped adequately. We really don't know the resource that we have. And that's pretty troubling when you think of the importance of water and water down the road. I was told to go to one person, and I talked to her, and she is an expert on water and aquifers. And I said, so how many people do you have working for you? At that time, she had none. She was the one person working on water for the whole of Canada on a federal basis. I think it has improved some now, but it's still a huge concern. The mining sector, again, a major user of water, that's going to increase. Agriculture, I think you can see a battle coming between irrigation. Cattle are huge users of water. And you have to remember in China, and I'm sorry for keep referring to China, but that's where I've been doing so much work, but there was 100,000 middle-class Chinese. That's people who had a third of their income expendable. Today there's 600 million middle-class Chinese with a third of their income expendable. They have gotten tired of ducks and have decided they like beef, they like pork, they like eggs, they like bacon. That's going to change, and a huge demand on the future of where we're going. And you just feel it everywhere you go. I don't know how many of you have been through China, but I've been fortunate enough to be in every province and speak in most of those, and it's amazing how fast it's changing there. So irrigation is a looming issue. There's going to be a lot of fights over irrigation, including the Red Deer River, and you know better than I do some of those pressures that are going to be brought to bear on the Red Deer River and potential for irrigation. The national water issues, of course, the whole point of jurisdiction, there's a little bit of a turf war between provinces and feds. I did have the pleasure of going, wrong word. I went to a meeting of environment ministers and the federal environment minister. 2-year-olds playing in a sandbox without a parent and one truck. Okay, that's somewhat what I observed of the interprovincial meetings. We've got to get over that. They got to start working together. It's one problem. It's water. And it's not a strictly one province versus another province. And of course we could do so much there. The impacts of climate change are going to be huge on water, and particularly in areas like ours. We developed a chart. We actually put a chart in 18,000 schools in Canada from the National Roundtable, where we showed the impacts of 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, and so on, and what that will mean for many issues. But of course, water will be one of the major ones. Initially, we'll have lots of water because our glaciers are melting, and in the prairies, we're going to have lots of water. We're going to have an increase in extreme weather events, but down the road, of course, we face the problem of not having anywhere near enough water, not anywhere near enough flow, and so we need to start dealing with that issue today and planning for the future. You can't plan in 3-year cycles. You got to plan in 30, 40, 50, 100-year cycles, and that's where we have to go. So if I had one message, long-term planning is critical. So this chart can be magnified. Actually, the Canadian Geographic did the full diagram, and if you want to look up their webpage, you can find every area of our country, and we did this province by province, how they're going to be affected by climate change depending on what temperature there is. Today, we have agreed in Copenhagen to be 17% below 2005 levels for Canadians. We just did a report last week that we released which shows, working with all the provinces, working with the federal plans, we are only halfway there. And by 2020, we will only have gone halfway to meeting a very simple target that we had. So it's serious. Canadians are not taking it serious, and we really need to, because down the road there are going to be tariffs put on those countries who are not in a low carbon economy. Whether we like it or not, we're going toward a low carbon world, and it will happen over time, and those countries who don't move that direction are not going to take advantage of the huge opportunities in technology that are coming, that we should be taking advantage of. They're jobs, they're our economy, and they I believe are our future. So we need to, as I say, get the public involved. I think if you ask people, we went out on the street today, everybody would tell you water is important. I don't think that's an issue anymore. I think though, you know, people are busy and haven't really dealt with the issue. So anyway, those are some of the issues, just an example in the first chapter, if you want. The second chapter is, okay, what are some of the solutions that we might use? The one thing that came across in the Cross Canada study was that there needs to be a greater value for water. Water has to be worth something. It can't be free. It's not free. And obviously conservation will happen when there's more of a price for water. So you'll find that being a major theme throughout this second report. And we need better data. We need to know what we've got. What resource do we have? How much water do we have? What are our aquifers like? Are they in a negative, or are they in a positive, or are they neutral? Where are they? And if you ask that question, no one will really know the answer. We don't know it for surface water, let alone for our aquifers. So there's so much needed to be done there. And again, we got to get over the turf wars. We got to get over the silos. We got to get departments working with each other. And all this is nice stuff to say, but very hard to accomplish. And so we need to get better water forecasting. We need to worry about water quality and getting the data on that. We need collaborative governance, and we need policies. If there's one thing that industry tells us over and over, and the guys on the National Roundtable who are from industry say, guys, you've got to have certainty. You've got to tell us where you're going, and then we'll get there. You know, a lot of people say, well, industry's all bad. I don't think it's all bad at all, but they have to know where you're going, and they have to have certainty in what your plans are. Some of the natural resource sector, the use forecast, the good issue is, of course, we're going to increase manufacture, increase production, increase all kinds of industries by a huge amount in the next 20 years, but we're going to only increase water use by 3% across the country. So that's good news, and again, that's largely through conservation and so on. The historical and a whole bunch of science is in this report, and I won't take time because I've been told I have half an hour. So recommendations are that governments should be able to predict and understand Governments need to collaborate and publish their work and get it to people like you so that you know it and understand it. And then government and industry need to work together to make it all happen. The pricing, it was interesting because how much would you reduce use if you put a price on it? And obviously every province agreed that there would be quite an increase in conservation if you put a price on water. I don't know whether I'm for or against. I don't know what the price should be. I don't know how it should work. But certainly this report, the second report, covers a lot of the pricing and deals with a lot of the pricing issues from this. The economic impacts, of course, some would tell you that it'll be disaster, but then a lot will tell you it's disaster no matter what. So it's sort of like when I was farming and so on, I wanted to go along with all of my neighbors and say, yeah, it's just a terrible, I'm losing everything, I'm going to go bankrupt tomorrow. But actually, I think I did quite well farming and loved it and enjoyed making some money too. But most important, I loved those little calves in the spring, and I loved the smell of that dirt the first time I worked it. That to me was a, number one of all things. So anyway, there is a recommendation. Remember that the Roundtable gives recommendations. Now, the Prime Minister said that we gave them policy, that we told them this is what you must do. That's totally not true. We gave recommendations as to this is what you might do, and this is what the implications might be, and you should look at it further. And there's really a lot of lack of information, and I find this is true in a lot of areas. It's true, in solar energy. It's true in just so many things. There's just such a lack of condensed information, and I'm not suggesting that these are that condensed. I've tried to condense more than I probably should have, but we really need to get the information out if we're going to manage a resource properly. And provinces and territories, of course, need to develop that toolkit. The quantity data, well, that goes without saying. And again, I'm sorry for flying through this, and I should have made a copy available to you, but I have been busy. I should thank you too. You got me away from renovating our kitchen. And this is a 2x4 that I wore. I'm the laborer, and I'm not that good at it. So my wife didn't hit me, but we're close, So we're still married, but renovations are not any fun. But anyway, collaborative water governance. You see some of the areas that were looked at. And the big problem is jurisdictional fragmentation, where one province says this is our realm, and another province says no, that's our realm, and feds stay out of it, and so on. And it just shouldn't be that way with water. It should be a national issue. It should be all provinces. And I have to say that on climate change, I was really pleasantly surprised. We all met in Kingston about a month ago, a representative from every province and the federal government. And it was really interesting how everybody agreed to work together. It was really an enlightened group of people that were there, and it's good news, I think, for the future. Anyway, again, you can see within this there are recommendations. I emphasize the word recommendations. Here's where you might go if you want to manage water, and and again, I've just tried to pick out little headlines out of these reports, and to really get a feel for it, you really need to look at the reports. The third one, and final one, is action. What are the priorities? What do you need to do to make all of this happen? And this one, I think, is probably the best one. It was done by a multi-stakeholder group meeting across the province, across all the provinces. The group met in Calgary and in Edmonton, and had Albertans there giving their point of view on Alberta. I don't know if anybody here was there. And but it was a multi-stakeholder. It was industry. It was councils, municipal councillors. It was people from all walks of life putting this together. It was very detailed, very well done. And a lot of, I give credit to the committee who really did a lot of hard work on that. And so the key themes were forecast. Here's the water data, and basically they looked at 50 years. Here's the data on water throughout the country. And of course, that's where they identified the prairies as being an area of critical concern, needing long-term planning. And so that fits right into the Red Deer River and the need for what has to happen here, where we have to look to all uses, and we have to look at balancing it off, and what is the future for water. That's what I think, if you ask people to condense what they want, that's what most people out on the street would tell you. Putting a price on water, you need to discuss that. You need to find out what are the implications of putting a price on water, how much should it be, what will it shut down, what will it help, but in the long term, what will be the benefits? Will it mean, as was shown in some reports, a 50% increase in conservation? Well, if that's the case, that might be a pretty good deal. And then, of course, the whole collaborative approach to what kind of regulations. And we also talked about that at the table. We got into a lot of things actually, but you know, we got so many regulations. And you know, I think about solar. I have solar panels on my house. Well, okay, if somebody built a 3-story house next to me or planted trees and grew over my solar panels, I got big problems. We need governance then. I'm talking mainly in an urban situation. But if we're going to encourage that sort of thing, then you got to think about the long term. And we already have lots of rules and regulations. But you know, when I decided I wanted to sell into the grid, I was told I had to build my solar panels 300 meters away from the closest residence. I wanted to put it on my roof. I was told that I had to get NAV Canada to approve because if an airplane got too close, it might be affected. I was told I had to get Alberta Transport permission because someone on a highway somewhere in Alberta might see it and be distracted. I was told as well that I had to have a noise impact study done for 4 kilometers around my house because the noise might bother the neighbors. Solar panels? The sun is really quiet. I wasn't sure how I was going to have a noise impact study and invite all my neighbors to come and listen to my solar panels because they would have, you know, so I suggested actually, and the guy got really annoyed with me, I suggested I get a big pig farm fan and I could turn it on when he comes so you know there was some noise, because of course my solar panels have 0 noise. But anyway, we need collaboration. We need to understand and set the rules right. So we need to forecast. We need a long-term forecast. We need it done by government in collaboration with all the provinces, all the municipalities, everybody. We've got to get the facts. We need to put this then together, and then we need to examine the value of water, what impacts the price will have on water, and how should we go. And you know, some places have already a price for water. Is it enough? Is it too much? What did it do? How are you going to make this work on a governance standpoint? And of course, this is where you get everybody involved. And nobody wants more regulations, but on something as vital as water, maybe we have to have those. So that was certainly a conclusion. If you want more information, there's the guy that was the chair. I threatened him that I would put his name up, and I don't usually threaten and not do. And so that's Chris was chairman. He worked hundreds of hours on that. And of course, at the bottom, you see the National Roundtable website, and that website will put you in contact with all of the reports. And even though the government plans to end this organization in March of next year, there is a plan to have it, to just keep this website active. And there's been about 5 universities have volunteered to be the storehouse for all of this information, whether it's climate change, whether it's water, whether it's the North and what we need to do about the development of the North in the next 50 years. But it's long-term thinking, and it's to me very, very vital. So I encourage you to look at that website, and that website, as I say, will be there for, we hope, forever, and the data will be there. What I hope doesn't happen is that 50 years from now, our kids look at it and say, well, man, they were told that this is what was going to happen. And that's my biggest fear with something like climate change, that somebody's going to say somewhere down the road, they told us. And, you know, it's, well, some of you know my garbage stories, and that's exactly now you know, fortunately, California, Beijing, lots of other places are developing the garbage treatment facility that we could have had here in central Alberta and could have been a world leader. And so now there's world leaders. Unfortunately, a lot of that technology is going to go offshore, and it's going to be sold to us down the road. And let's not let that happen. Let's not let that happen with water.